I call the Kitty Hawk Town Council to order this June 6, 2016, at Kitty Hawk Town Hall. It's now 6 p.m. I was looking at to see if we had a lot of folks. We don't. That's kind of a surprise, but anyway, for those that'll look later, we appreciate you paying attention to your town government. There's quite a lot going on here tonight. Will you join us with a moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next is a call for approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and one a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, next we have public comment. Is there anybody here to speak on the feral cat ordinance? No? All right. The reason I ask that question is this is not a public hearing ordinance. It would require you to be able to speak at the public comment, so that's why I put that in there. All right. We're now in public comment. Anybody signed up?
No, sir.
Does anyone wish to speak about anything? All right. Silence is golden. Let the record show no one came forward. Next is the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as promulgated?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Leo, it was that simple. And I'm going to add, just so the public will know, with the passage of this, we have also basically formally accepted the bond, the special obligation bond. That paperwork will now, I think, goes before the LGC in a couple of days, and then by the 10th, the whole thing, I believe, gets settled. We are committed to beach nourishment. That, of course, won't happen until next year, but it looks like everything is on track with no hiccups that we foresee. So I just thought I'd pass that along to you. We normally take stuff like that out of the consent agenda, but that was too much. We just couldn't do that. All right. Next, we have public hearings. Let's go into public hearing. Do I hear a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
And this is for the fiscal year 2016-17 budget. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. You're up. Sir. If anybody's watching, I'm not sure where the cameraman has us, but there's been a technical glitch with the computer.
Sorry about that. Let's see here.
Good job, Andy.
I'm still a rookie, I guess. So So,
This-
what
this
I'll
is
do,
old school.
good evening, sorry about that delay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the town council. The council met in April for a budget work session, so what you see in the proposed fiscal year 16-17 budget is what was discussed at our work session, and any changes that we've made, I'll kind of highlight that in the brief presentation for the general public more than I feel the town council at this point. You guys have seen this. So the proposed budget for fiscal year 16-17, let's talk about some of the objectives when staff began the budget process. Some of the objectives were to create an environment that fosters and encourages investment in our town. We wanted to continue to provide affordable services that improve the quality of life for our residents, and we wanted to maintain and sustain existing infrastructure, equipment, and facilities. And they also wanted to continue growth and development of one of our most valuable assets, which would be our town employees. So those are some of the objectives when we started the budget process for 16-17. Kind of an overview of the budget that you have before you this evening. The total revenues for the budget are $7.9 million, and the total expenditures, $7.9 million, $49,289. So the budget's balanced with revenues equaling the total expenditures. The budget proposes no tax increase, and it's based off a 34 cents per $100 valuation of property value, and then we'll continue to implement the MS, the Municipal Service District, and that's an additional 12 cents per $100 of valuation. So really nothing changed this year from the previous fiscal year as far as the tax rates for the residents. And that was a direction that I received from council earlier on, is to not increase the taxes. So we were able to balance our budget and put together a really good budget based on the existing tax rate. Some of the highlights, and it's kind of hard to see here, but I'll go over them. The revenue highlights for the general fund reflects an increase of $157,000 in local option sales tax from fiscal year 15-16. A large portion of the increase was due to implementing the MSD. We received more revenue because of that MSD. However, with the local option sales tax, the funds generated from the additional funds generated by the implementation of the MSD have to be set aside for beach nourishment. So really $128,000 of that increase is set aside for beach nourishment. The occupancy tax is based on the same calculation. It increased to $125,000 because the calculation for that is based on ad valorem distribution, and once again, the MSD increases the amount of ad valorem we collect. So $125,000 increase for the occupancy tax. The land transfer tax went up $78,000. That's based on the same formula distribution. We increased the electricity utility tax by $86,000 from what we saw in fiscal year 15-16. We just saw that being simply a budget, I think, that was a little bit under budget. The auditor mentioned that during our last audit, was to kind of bring our revenues up more to what they historically have been. So that was just basically a sort of an under projection in 15-16 that we thought we needed to adjust this year. And then also the budget reflects a $45,000 transfer from our power bill reserves to fund the Bird Street Drainage Improvement Project, which the town does have an application into FEMA for grant assistance. So there is a possibility that that project could be 75% funded by FEMA once we hear word back if we're approved or not approved for the grant. The council approved that several months ago to submit the application. So we're constantly looking for ways to fund projects through grant monies at the town of Kitty Hawk. The budget reflects $125,000 from the capital reserves to offset the purchase of a broom truck in our Public Works Department. The current broom that we have is used to sweep the highways after ocean overwash and to clean our streets. The current piece of equipment that we have is outdated, but there's not enough power on the broom to spin and move the sand like it needs to be done. It's kind of underpowered, the broom. So that piece of equipment will be very beneficial to our town, and especially along the beach road. And then also, we've budgeted $70,000 to come from the Storm Damage Reduction Fund, and that was going to assist in some of the condemnation of the easements for beach nourishment. And that's kind of we don't know exactly what that's going to cost, but that kind of sets the money aside for attorney fees and things like that as we go through our easement condemnations for beach nourishment. General fund expenditures. What you'll see on the expenditure side of the budget is in this next fiscal year, we had originally intended to have to pay for the principal and interest of the beach nourishment. However, being the project was pushed back a year, the payment is not due until, the whole principal and interest payment isn't due until fiscal year 17-18. So this budget year, we're only including the interest payment. So that's why you saw the budget go from 9.4 million down to 7.9 million is because we simply had to not budget for that payment. There's a two-step pay plan adjustment for the starting salaries across the board. That reflects a $99,000 increase in expenditures to make that possible. And what we really are trying to accomplish with this is bring our starting pay up to stay competitive with the other local municipalities and county. The budget supplements the cost of 6 full-time firefighters versus the permanent part-time positions that we have covering our 3 shifts now at the fire department. And after discussion from the budget work session, it was decided that we'd rather have a full complement of firefighters at our department and to remove any fire apparatus that was planned out of the 5-year CIP. So any purchases, future purchases would be, obviously wouldn't be identified in the 5-year plan. So any new purchases would be 5 years out. Adjustment of the chief of police salary, bringing that position from a step 4 in the pay plan to a step 9. And then we also noticed an increase to our workers' compensation premiums of approximately $41,844. One thing to note is that we are looking at our health insurance, and we think we do have some good news on that as far as some possible savings to the town, but we're still analyzing the plan and the provider. So we've been competitive at trying to keep our costs down any way that we can. So I think we may have some good news coming back to the council, hopefully in July. Some of the major capital expenditures, as I just mentioned, the broom truck for Public Works of $83,000. And the one thing to note here is the town over the past several years has put away money to make that purchase. So that is good planning on part of the town council to do those types of things. And you'll see throughout the budget of reserve funds, which is money that the council has set aside. So you guys have done a great job at planning ahead for the future. Annual street resurfacing, $90,000. We receive some monies from the state every year to do resurfacing, and every year our Public Works Director gets those projects done. We're going to replace 2 patrol vehicles at $63,000, and the purchase of 3 self-contained breathing apparatuses for the fire department at $18,500. Total capital purchases proposed to the $378,000. The proposed fund balance was the total fund balance for the town at the end of fiscal year 14-15, which was our most recent audit. The town had a total fund balance of $6.7 million. You can see the breakdown of the fund balance, what the monies that are set aside for. The town has you'll see there towards the bottom, a $3.5 million emergency reserve, and that's for purchases that should be made in case of emergency. We're not able to expend those funds without coming to the council for approval. So that is a healthy reserve. And in addition to that, the town has an unrestricted fund balance of almost $1.4 million. In addition to that emergency reserve, which is good in case you overspend on your budget or come under. You add to that fund balance. If you overspend, you have a cushion there where you don't have to dip into the $3.5 million reserve. With that being said, the council does have quite a bit of financial reserves available and is in financial, is pretty financially stable. And in summary, sort of to summarize the entire budget, as I said, the most important thing I feel is there's no tax increase in our budget. We begin to fund the beach nourishment project, which will take place in June and July of 2017. And we're going to continue to provide the expected and exceptional services for our residents. And we haven't made any service cuts in our budget. And the town is going to continue to maintain the $3.5 million of emergency reserve funds. So overall, I think we'll have a pretty successful 16-17 fiscal year, and I'll stand for any questions. I apologize about the.
Okay, we'll forgive you this time, but next year. Council, anybody have a question?
No, sir.
Okay. This is a public hearing. We're in open public hearing. Does anyone have a question on the budget that you would want to address at this point in time? No? All right. Let the record show no one came forward for that. Are we ready to go back into regular session? Do I hear a motion to,
So moved.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, council, what do you want to do with the budget? Not see it anymore?
Mr. Mayor, I vote to approve the adoption of the fiscal year 2016-17 budget ordinance and related documents as presented.
All right, do I hear a second? All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, budget, you got it. Now, the next thing we had was a conditional use permit. It's been canceled at the request of the applicant. Rob, is that dead, or is it going to come back to us?
No, they've withdrawn the application.
So it's gone as far as we'll see in the future. All right, good. All right, next we have planning, call for public hearing, text amendment, and it has to do with the planned commercial development over at Beechwoods, the timeshare place. Let's see. We're just calling for it, council. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to set a public hearing at the town council meeting on July 5th, 2016, to consider the proposed text amendment of section 42-419-3, minimum buffer required in planned commercial development district.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, just so you know, I asked on this particular item for Rob to do some research and tell us why there's a difference between a PUD and a PCD in this case. So when he brings it back to us for the actual hearing, hopefully we'll have some background to know why it was set that way in the first place. That way, we're not undoing something that was intentional and maybe had a purpose we just don't know about. So I just thought I'd give you a heads up on that. All right, new business, appointments to town boards and committees. We do this every year, and by ordinance, we have to. So, council, first, do I hear a nomination for a regular member to the planning board? We have one, Brian Parker, would have to be reappointed. Do you hear a nomination?
I'll make the motion. I make a motion for Brian Parker to be reappointed as a regular member on the planning board, term to expire in June of 2018.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further nominations? Record will show none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next is another motion. Do I hear a nomination, make a motion for appointment as a regular member to the vacant position on the planning board, Dylan Tillett left us, so do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion for Dusty Rhodes to be appointed as a regular member to the vacant position on the planning board, term to expire June 2018.
All right, are there any other nominations? All right, do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
All right. Lynn? Okay, you got it. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we need to fill a vacancy. we need to fill Dusty's position. Do I hear a motion to fill, what is it? We're appointing an alternate
An alternate.
to the
Yes, sir.
planning board.
Yes.
All right, do I hear a
Mis-
motion to that?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for Janice Collins to be appointed to Dusty Rhodes vacancy as an alternate on the planning board, term to expire June 2017.
Any other nominations? Hearing none? A
Second.
second? All right, Lynn seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aren't opposed? All right. Now we have to have a chair and a vice chair redone. Do you hear a motion for chair and vice chair, and you can do them both together?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion for John Richardson to be appointed as chairman and Brian Parker as vice chairman of the planning board with a term of office to expire in June 2017.
Are there any other nominations for those? Hearing none? Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we're in the Board of Adjustment. We have 2 regular members and 1 alternate member. All right. Do we hear a motion for reappointment? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for David Morton and Charlotte Walker to be reappointed as regular members, and Natalie Smith to be reappointed as an alternate member on the Board of Adjustments. The term of office are until June 2019.
All right. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Recreation Committee. We have 3 terms of office expiring in June. First motion, that'll be for reappointment and appointment. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion for Christine Buckner and Rita Phyllis to be reappointed and Linda Barnhart to be appointed to the Recreation Committee. The terms of office are until June 2020.
Okay, that was Linda in this line. Okay. All right, any other nominations? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. The second was Craig?
Yes, sir.
Got it. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we have to make an appointment to an unexpired term for Ricky Brake, who's left us. Do I hear a motion for that?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion for Paul Henrique to be appointed to the unexpired term of Ricky Brake. Term of office is until June 2018.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Will that take care of you? And now we come to the fun part. A feral cat ordinance. Andy, you kind of took this. Do you want to give us some background onto it?
Yes, I'd be happy to. This ordinance is similar to an ordinance that was adopted by Dare County. There are some similarities, there are some things that are a little less restrictive than the county ordinance regarding feral cat colonies. My first month on the job, I was invited to go to a homeowners association meeting at Sea Dunes, and they had expressed their concern with the number of feral cats that were hanging out on their property and then also on the town's property at the bathhouse. So we worked, Public Works and ourselves, we worked to try to eliminate, some of the cats hanging there we put some new trash cans with some better lids. And then we also put some signs up that says no feeding of animals, because we just didn't want any animals being fed there, not necessarily cats, but just any animals in general. So after meeting with them, we had some meetings between the homeowners association between some other residents that have been taking care of some of these feral cats. So I think it's just an issue that most that I've seen that we've dealt with here on the Outer Banks is with just the population of unowned cats. So the residents have been pushing for an ordinance, and we've been trying to work it behind the scenes. However, I think at this point, it's kind of just something the council would need to address as far as the control of feral cat colonies. So we put something together for the council to consider and kind of see where it goes. The ordinance, if you want me to kind of do an overview of the ordinance, the ordinance is really, the purpose of it is to, if there are going to be feral cat colonies, that these colonies are maintained and there's somebody that's overseeing the colonies. John Graves from the SPCA's here this evening kind of helped review this ordinance and kind of recommended that if we were to adopt something to control this, that it would be similar to the Dare County ordinance. And he can talk about the more specifics of how the colonies come to be and why they're where they're at. And if he doesn't mind, I may have him come up because he is aware of the issue there at the Sea Dunes, and he can talk a little more educated on the subject than I can. But basically, it regulates the feeding of the cats in the ordinance to half a cup of dry food of a cat per day to not attract other cats. It says if you're going to have and maintain a colony, you have to have permission from property owners within 100 yards of where you're feeding the cats. It talks about the sanitary, having to keep up with the shots and the spay and neutering of the cats. And it also, if there is an issue with the cat, that we know who that cat caregiver is, and the police department could go out and find out what the issue is with the cat and if they're following the rules of the ordinance. So at this point, we did try to work it out from neighbor to neighbor. This is really the only complaint that I've gotten is in the Sea Dunes area. I know some of the other restaurants in the area have their own colonies as well. So I do know that it's not the only colony in the town of Kitty Hawk, but some of the residents simply just don't like to have to deal with the cats. So I'm sure many of you maybe have probably gone out to the bathhouse since we've been receiving some of the emails. And we're just trying to work with both parties, the ones that are doing something about the feral cat colonies. I don't think that they went out and bought these colonies. They just kind of been taking care of animals that are stray animals. So they have been putting in their resources to do this. And then on the other side, you have the residents that don't think that they should have to deal with, these cat colonies. So with that being said, I can answer any other questions or specifics, and maybe Mayor, if we don't mind, maybe John Graves can give an overview.
Let me ask a couple of questions before you come up, because they'll probably impact what you're going to say anyway. Before I get started, anybody else have some issues here that you want to discuss? All right. I guess the first thing that I'm going to ask you is, you say within 100 yards of a feeding station. Now, lot sizes, a lot of lot sizes around Kitty Hawk, that would be nowhere. I mean, you'd have to have a pretty big lot to even have a feeding station. So we recognize that was intended. Is that normal?
Well, if I can, just let me read this section here. It's section 4-15, A, cat colonies. Feeding stations, shelters shall be no less than 100 yards from property for which permission to maintain a colony has not been obtained. So you'd have to get permission. As you say, though, you are correct. It would be probably 6 or 7 properties to keep within 100 yards.
That's right. So, a normal-sized yard or lot in Kitty Hawk wouldn't be able to do this unless he had permission from
That's correct.
every resident adjacent.
That's
All
the
right.
distance requirement.
I wanted to make sure we got that in the record. All right. And then the other thing that this whole thing started over was these cats are roaming on the other people's property, and they don't want them on their property. The only place I see that, where is it? Colony location shall be upon property owned by the caregiver or upon property for which the caregiver has written permission from the property owner. Does that mean they have to be contained within that? Is that strong enough to keep the cats, the free roaming cats, from going on people's property, which started the whole thing?
That's where the enforcement becomes a little bit challenging as far as, yet no, it doesn't say that they're not able to roam to another property and.
Steve, help me.
Well, when I read it, I saw that, and there's no enforcement except if they go on other people's property. There is a section in here that says you can call animal control, and they can remove the feral cats from that owner's property. Not the caregiver's property. If they come on your property, you can call and have them removed.
Okay. So there is a mechanism. if
There is.
That cat's disturbing me, and I don't want those cats around me, 20 or 30 cats. I can call animal control, and they'll come take them away.
Correct.
And then do you give them back so that they come back? That's another issue. All right. Let's see, what was the other thing? We had information from the people that really started this, that were talking about the definition of feral cat means a cat. But they think that, and I may agree with them, that it should say feral cats, free roaming cats, stray cats, cats, community, in other words, cats that are not domestic or owned cats. Do we need to add that? That's my question. In order to make this clear, what we're trying to get a handle on to.
Well, it says not socialized to humans, and I'm not quite sure how you determine that, but it says and not owned, so it means any cat that is not personally owned by an owner would fit into this category as a feral cat. So that would be a stray.
Okay, so basically, we don't need to add what was suggested.
I don't think for what you're trying to do that you do, because if the cat has an identified owner, has an identification, they're going to contact the owner is what they do. If they can't identify it, it's going to be treated just like a feral cat, I would guess.
All right, and then, there is a maximum number of cats allowed per location, that's spelled out in here. That's a lot of cats. on a
Yeah,
acre.
and I believe the county ordinance was allowed a lot more cats per acre, so that's just the number that I picked out of the air as far as the number of cats you're allowed per acre.
I wouldn't want that many cats. All right, then, under 415A, cat colonies, subsection 8, where it's talking about feeding stations and feeding the feral cats shall not take place on town-owned property. Colonies maintained on properties within 100 yards of town-owned property. You say do not require written permission. I disagree with that. I think it should have to have written permission from the town, because in a previous one, we were talking about on federal land, it's not allowed. They're not permitted. Why should they be permitted on town property? We need to get a better handle on that, especially around the bathhouse and places like that. Does anyone else disagree with that?
No.
I mean, if you're requiring a colony owner or a colony keeper, whatever they are, to get permission to have on their property from all the adjacent, what would be different? Why is the town different? I think that should be changed.
I do too.
Okay. All right. So, you see where I'm talking?
Yep.
All right. Change that,
So can you just clarify?
clarify, yeah.
You want me to just feeding stations shall not?
Well, what I'm going to recommend is, I don't know that we want to pass this tonight. I think we want,
You're a smart man. I said, you're a smart man. I have issue, I mean, guys, I understand. I don't think this is enforceable. I mean, you're putting teeth into something, I don't know if you need to put teeth into it. I mean, it's like, I went through the dog issue. Y'all remember the dog issue we had in Kitty Hawk? I mean, that was the biggest fiasco you ever seen in your whole life. So you're all of a sudden, you're putting teeth into an ordinance, you want to do something, but you can't really do it because it's 100 yards from any, it doesn't make any sense. So we're just doing this to appease, or are we doing it because we want to enforce it? Tell me, talk to me.
right now, we don't have any way to enforce anything and allow cats somewhere, but people that don't want the cats not be infringed upon. And this is an attempt to try to meet both of those areas. And we had to pass a dog ordinance, we had to pass a horse ordinance. We haven't had to deal with chickens because they've been around forever, but, you know, animals. I guess we need an ordinance in order to control or be able to allow our staff to have some kind of control over where these things roam free. And there are too many. I mean, let's face it.
I agree, but, I mean, I don't know if it just seems to me that a lot of this stuff is just unenforceable.
Well, if it becomes unenforceable later,
With the 100-yard, that's ridiculous. First of all, what property do we know in Kitty Hawk that you would have a 100-yard buffer between a feeding station for a colony of cats?
well, I have a piece, but he ain't gonna do it.
I
That
got-
ain't happening.
I got 3.5 acres.
That's
on-
not the point. The point we're trying to do is, a disagreement occurred. There was no way to settle it without some sort of a town ordinance to give staff something to work with. SPCA, in this case, something to work with. They had to do it down in Hatteras. And by the way, the same folks that give us this information about some suggestions, we're also talking about, one lady from Hatteras got something like 350 cats. 350 cats. Did they all go back to Hatteras? No, they probably wound up here in Kitty Hawk. So cats are being moved around. And this is an attempt to do something.
Okay, that's cool.
If you don't want to do it, then, you know.
No,
say
I'm
so.
just, yeah,
What can we do to make it right or make it an ordinance? Because I'm like, some of us have had the discussion, we've ridden through some of these areas, and I wouldn't want that many cats around me.
oh, I wouldn't.
Not at all.
I don't blame these folks for complaining one bit. I don't blame them at all. So
I
if we
think it's up to us to try to help these people and also work with the SPCA.
If
to
we can
try, and Andy's worked hard, and I think we need to continue to try to work together. And I'd be interested to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, I want to hear him too.
I'd
Okay,
be
it's
real
time.
interested to hear what we got to say about this. Sure.
Been to that table, that's as far as I've made it. I'm John Graves, I'm the director of the Outer Banks SPCA, Dare County Animal Services. I apologize, I completely missed this meeting on my radar until about 3:30 today. So a lot of this I'm just kind of running off memory and experience. The reason for the 100-yard rule, that was something that the county brought forward. This ordinance is 85% at this point written by me, and in line with trying to strike a balance, as we're saying, between homeowners and feral cat caregivers. And also, the most important thing for me was putting in requirements of these colony caregivers. The number one reason why we continue to have such a population boom is because we have such a high resource area. We have a temperament climate, obviously, you know, the cats can just thrive here. And from overfeeding from feral cat givers, you know, people that are good-natured and have, you know, the best intentions, but actually end up overfeeding, which increases the resources, which increases the population. So that's part of the reason why we've had this explosion. That's why the section, you know, 4.15 was so important to me as far as establishing and giving them guidelines to adhere to. A lot of them just don't know. And these guidelines actually came from a national organization known as Alley Cat Allies. This is what they recommend for their colonies. We tweaked it a little bit to make it, you know, more efficient for us, as far as like feeding for 2 hours in a day, you know. And with the 100-yard rule, basically is kind of set up to protect all of the neighbors. I mean, you're gonna have areas here where people are gonna be within 4 or 5 or 6 lots that do want to have a feral colony nearby. But then you're going to have areas where they don't. And that's why the 100-yard rule is actually in effect. So the way you all wrote it, which is much better, it's actually 100 yards from the feeding stations, not necessarily from like a cat, because obviously cats don't stay put in one spot. So having that 100-yard rule, again, is to kind of help everyone in the area. So say you've got a feral cat colony here, now you've got 100 yards around it. The cats will hopefully stay within that, and you've got permission from everyone there. Now, if you don't want them there, then we've got to move them, you know? I also want to say that there are still public nuisance, you know, charges that we can follow with, you know, and public nuisance ordinances that we can use, but this helps establish what a public nuisance is, you know? Just because someone is adhering to all these guidelines, if they have, say they have 44 cats on an acre, and it's bothering the person right next door within that 100 yards, then we've got something to go back there with, you know? It's a huge subject, I can talk all night about it, so I'm trying to, you know, keep this as short as I can, and I said going off of memory here. So, one of your questions was, you know, is 100 yards strong enough? And, you know, I think so. I mean, I think, like I said, that's gonna at least be a good basis. And anyone having an issue outside of that 100-yard rule is still gonna have, if that cat belongs to this colony, we're still gonna have to deal with it as a public nuisance. That's how we've been doing this for years. This just gives us a little more enforcement. I won't say the enforcement is easy or perfect, because it's definitely not. It's gonna be very difficult, but at least it's something on the books, you know? Anything you put out there is gonna be hard to enforce with cats because they're migratory. They move around a lot, you know? But like I said, putting something in place is better than nothing. Once these guys are impounded, just so you know, we do hold all our cats for 8 days, including feral cats, giving caregivers an opportunity to come forward. As well as obviously people to come forward and, you know, reclaim their cats. You know, we want to make sure people are given ample time to get their own cat back if their cat is caught in a trap. And I just want to say I agree with you 100% about the town permission. I think that was a very good catch. You know, if you're requiring people to have permission from homeowners, you know, I think it makes perfect sense to have the town's permission in there as well. What questions do you guys have for me? I'm probably going to be able to be better at answering those.
I guess the one I got is, so this is going to give you, how did this work for you in Hatteras? Did it?
We haven't had any calls really in relation to this yet, I'm not gonna lie. The only calls that we've gotten were people that were already in motion of adjusting to this. You know, this was pushed out there and all of the feral cat people knew it was coming. You know, all the caregivers, we kept them in the loop and said, here's what's coming, prepare yourselves. And the only colony that I'm aware of that we had any issues with have been moved. And that's what, you know, there was one woman in particular who's kind of constantly moving the cats, trying to find the right spot, but she seems to have now, you know. These caregivers just want the best for their cats. You know, they of course get frustrated when they find out that they have to move a colony, but they do it with no problem. When this ordinance was written, before it went up, you know, for vote, Feline Hope reviewed it, and Friends of Feline down in Hatteras both reviewed it as well. And they were as happy as they possibly could be with it, you know. And the town commissioners are happy with it. And, you know, so you've got, the town commissioners are obviously looking more at the residents, and the animal people are looking more at what their colonies can do, you know. So, the original version had a lot of registration requirements that we told we don't have the manpower for. You know, I will definitely say that, you know, having someone at the shelter to actually register and monitor these colonies, it's a full-time job, you know, especially once you get down into Hatteras and to all these places, if we require registration. So that way we put in the requirements, you know, everyone who's caring for a colony does have to maintain their own records and make them available to us and the sheriff's department of the county, or us and the police department. That's how it was written here. So like I said, they are maintaining their records.
I have a question about the caregivers. When you trap these cats, they are neutered and the ears notched before return to a caregiver, is that
Yeah.
correct?
We don't trap for TNR purposes, just to be clear.
Okay.
We do help caregivers,
Right.
you know, by like loaning them traps or what it may be. Or somebody calls us and says, I have a feral cat, I want to get fixed, then we will help them in that respect, but we don't actually go out. We don't have the manpower to go out and set traps, and we don't have the finances to trap every cat and neuter them in Dare County. If I did, you know, we wouldn't be here, you know, unfortunately. So, yeah, if somebody comes to us and they want to get them fixed, and yes, we do help them in that way. And if we trap one, then we do reach out to the caregivers and try to find out where it's going. If that cat is causing a public nuisance, then we will, like, obviously, for one, it gives us an opportunity to open up that dialogue and address it, and we can have this to go back to, you know. If it's causing a nuisance, then the colony has to be moved or, you know, contained in one way or another. We also have cat stops that we use quite frequently at the shelter. It's like an ultrasonic cat deterrent. I think Sea Dunes got stolen or something happened actually with them. They started out with a couple of them, and they disappeared. We had a woman in Mania recently who's had a lot of luck with hers, you know, and her neighbors, we put one in her yard basically while her neighbors were building a cat enclosure for the, I think, 4 feral cats that they were feeding out there. So yeah, you know, we've had varying results there, you know, and we just have a lot of different approaches to this. It's a big problem. It's definitely the biggest problem that we face, you know, most reoccurring problem, and it's been that way for 25 years, you know, as long as we've been doing this, basically. Again, we just have, like, unfortunately, the most perfect climate in the world for feral cats. You know, they just thrive here.
Will you be able to work with this ordinance that you've helped write?
I love this.
And
ordinance,
to help us with some of the problems we're having here?
Yeah,
Do you think this is going to help us?
I do. I absolutely do. And when this ordinance passed in January, that was when Sea Dunes started reaching out to me again, wanting us to come out there and enforce this ordinance. And that's when I said, well, unfortunately, this is a county ordinance. You know, you're going to have to take that up with you guys. So sorry about that. Yeah, this is definitely workable for us. It really is, you know. Sea Dunes is so unique because it's, you know, multiple homeowners, obviously, so they have their own disruptions within their own group as to what they feel about the cats. But if they decide as a group, as, you know, single property owners, that they don't want them on the property, then we go in and we start moving them, you know. So,
Answer your question?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Lynn?
It answered it, and I definitely feel the town should be asked for permission on properties near town property.
Okay.
It's kind of clear to me, and we had, your issue might be from the Sea Dunes, might be Lafagadas. We have cats that come to my restaurant, Sugar Creek, all the time, and we had a ton of them there, and we trapped them. We just took them over the bridge, over to Longshore. Okay, you can't walk across the bridge to get back, so I got rid of my cats.
see you for Watchies?
Yeah.
Thanks. That's where I live, by the way.
No. But, but they hang around restaurants, because first of all, it's free food.
They do.
But in the other side now, they take care of your rodent
I was
problem.
gonna say, now, managed cat colony, you know, and it's amazing, you know, what line of defense that actually provides against other feral cats moving in. You know, you said rodents, you know, we've had I know a local business owner is unfortunately no longer with us, but he had all of his cats removed from a restaurant. And about 6 months later, he was calling back, asking if he could get them back, because, he said he went to throw the trash away, and I won't repeat exactly what he said. You know, he discovered a rat bigger than his head, basically, you know, and brought the cats back out, you know, no problem. The nice thing about cats is they don't go inside, you know, I can't say the same thing about rats or mice, you know. I also know of a community down in Duck. There's one particular road, they have a feral cat colony at the end of the road, and every other house around them had an issue one summer where all of their ductwork was completely destroyed by raccoons and other, you know, small pests, and this one road, totally unaffected, you know, because that colony just, you know, runs the whole street and keeps them pests at bay.
I'm satisfied.
You all satisfied? All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I appreciate it. All right, so, I'm gonna make a motion to approve this feral cat ordinance with the change, with the amendment to require town permission, just like everybody else, and leave it otherwise as written. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
So So now we got dogs taken care of, horses taken care of, cats taken care of,
Don't bring up chicken.
cock-a-doodle-doo.
Nope,
Don't do livestock. All right.
not going there.
Okay, next we have a resolution opposed in North Carolina's House Bill 1122 that would limit marine net fishing. I think the majority of this council knows where that one should go. Do I hear a motion on that? You got it?
I make a motion opposing North Carolina House Bill 1122 that would limit marine net fishing.
All right,
I second.
and a summary of what that amounts to is, the House Bill 1122 has been introduced in the North Carolina Legislature to put a referendum on the ballot in 2016 general election that would limit marine net fishing purportedly to protect saltwater, finfish, sailfish, and other marine animals from unnecessary killing, overfishing, and waste. And because net fishing has been a vibrant and successful part of North Carolina's heritage, certainly all my life and beyond that, and our culture for all its recorded history, and represents a means by which commercial fishermen create jobs, provide for families, and contribute to the economic well-being of North Carolina coastal communities. And it goes on to talk about the whole general aspect of what net fishing can do, and it is properly regulated. If we're all in favor of passing this resolution opposing HB 1122, do I hear ayes?
Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, the resolution will be sent off. And somebody else will attack something else next. All right, Andy, do you have any comments for us?
Not this evening.
All right. Steve?
I just want to let you know that we're down to 14 condemnations that we'll need to.
Good
file.
gracious.
So, and 6 of those are for properties that are unbuildable lots, that
Empty lot.
empty lots. So we think that's pretty good.
That's a
Getting
far
there.
cry from 27 and 30 and the upward numbers we started with, so.
Very good.
Excellent, thank you, that's good news. All right, town council. Jeff, you got anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Andy for working with the people at Sea Dunes and putting together this ordinance for us about this cat, so we can hopefully get some resolve for the homeowners. Thank you for your time there.
Dan?
I have nothing tonight.
I'd just like to thank staff and Andy for a good budget. And it was a pleasure. It was precise. It was clear that I could understand it. And just appreciate all the hard work you did. And I do want to go on record saying that the maker of this House bill on the fishing is an idiot.
I'll second
I'll
that.
second that.
I'm done.
There's more than one of them up there, you know.
I know, but one gentleman came up with it, and he's an idiot.
Yeah, okay. I think we all got that. Craig?
I'd like to thank Mr. Steve Michael for being a friend and to this town and many others in Dare County for a long time. He's given us some great guidance. You're just a good person, you're a great attorney, and we appreciate what you've done for us.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
And what's prompting that is Steve's going to leave us in July, so he's going to retire, or so he thinks. I thought I retired too, but it didn't work out. Anyway,
He's not gone yet.
he's not gone yet. And we will miss you, but you're not gone yet, and we'll get more out of you next month. Now, for mine, we do have something that came up since the agenda was out. I didn't put it on the agenda, but I want to discuss it, and we need to make a decision on it. And it has to do with a court case down in Emerald Isle that has to do with access for the public to the beach, dry sand and wet sand. The Court of Appeals had favored the public, but now it's going to the North Carolina Supreme Court. And the town of Emerald Isle is asking for some help in the form of an amicus brief and some money to file amicus brief and other filings in order to continue the fact that we have always enjoyed the beach from the toe of the dune to the ocean. And that's not been considered private property. So it's a case that benefits all of us. It's a case that will hurt us deeply if the Supreme Court of North Carolina, or if it gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, goes against us. And in this case, we probably should put some money where our mouth is, because it's for the benefit of all of us, everybody that access the beach. We're not talking about oceanfront property owners, we're talking about everybody but oceanfront property owners. So, I put to you tonight, do you want to put some money towards an amicus brief to friend of the court against the suits that's been brought to take away that public trust right? The amount that was asked was $2,000. I've checked with Steve about an amicus brief, and part of what we're going to do tonight is instruct Andy to talk with all the other town managers and the county to find out if that amicus brief should be done within the county and the towns, or if we should just send the money down to Emerald Isle and they will do all of it. That is to be determined. So the first question I got for you is, do you want to give money? Am I seeing yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to give the 2,000?
Yeah.
Is that what everybody?
Well, that's what's being asked.
Once again, I would like for us all to kind of be on the side. I wouldn't want one town to give a whole bunch and us a little, or us a whole bunch. I'd like to be on the same page. I'm willing to give if that's going to be the
Okay.
general amount, yes.
Right now, Duck and Nags Head have committed to 2,000.
Okay, then
And I would expect the others to do the same.
Then I also.
All right. Whether that 2,000 goes to Emerald Isle or goes to a separate amicus bill that, say, the county and the towns put together is a different story, but we're committing to $2,000
Okay.
Okay.
in the interest of the public. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have that as a consensus, all right? And Andy, your instructions are to get with all the other towns in the county and let me know what's the best course of action, and then I'll pass that to council. Will do. And we're doing this in a public eye so that you know how the money's being spent, why it's being spent, and if you have questions about how important it is, look at that Court of Appeals opinion, and the clerk of court will have that information if somebody needs it for public. I think you have it. If you don't, we'll get it for you. Okay. It's an important read, and if it gets reversed, it's a problem for us, okay? All right. That's all I have. Andy, thank you for a good budget. I agree. It was very readable, put together well, and we didn't have to raise taxes. I always like that.
It's awesome.
Public comment. Anybody want to speak? Nobody? Last chance. Let the record show no one came forward. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? All in favor? We got to set up for a voter tomorrow, everybody? Yep.
Who's voting?
I don't know.
Good meeting.
What, do you vote tomorrow?
Break after the meeting, I'll tell you to vote.